Hello, BookTube. Well, we did it. We actually did it. I have mail for you today, which means we've gone a whole week with mail every day. I had resigned myself in late February, early March, to the fact that that would stop and that it'd be a long time before it started up again, because publishers have mail rooms and people are all at home. No one's at work. So I was just assuming that the mail would peter out and then stop. And maybe it will. I don't expect that I'll get back to 10 packages a day anytime soon. But every day this week, we have had a trickle of mail. And today ends that. And we got all the way to Saturday with mail every day. And not only do we end it, but it's a huge amount of mail today. It's something approaching my normal amount. I think some of that is because of a little online book ordering that I've been doing. I think some of these packages will be that. And I'm hoping that that it's that instead of presents from you. so let's go through some of these and see what we have. Some of these I think are from publishers. So some of it is, it's not all online. Okay, yeah, here's a perfect example. This is from the publisher. And we saw an advanced copy of this, I believe. And this is coming out in early June. This is by Douglas Boyne, and this is Alaric the Goth, an outsider's history of the fall of Rome. Very pretty finished copy from W.W. Norton. And this comes with tons of advanced blurbs. This is a biography. It's not a very long one, but it's a biography. From AD 395 to 410. Alaric the Goth reigned over the Visigoths, the western Germanic tribes that settled in Spain after the invasion of Rome. Alaric was an outstanding soldier who, angry at Rome's refusal to recognize his army's service and to grant its members citizenship, launched a surprise attack on Rome and laid siege to the city, not once or twice, but 3 times in a period of 3 years. In the eyes of many historians, the last 3-day siege was one of the most decisive factors in the fall of the Roman Empire. Painstakingly accumulating every scrap of evidence he could find on Alaric, historian Douglas Boyne has carefully pieced together the Goth ruler's life. Re-envisioning and ultimately correcting the conventional story of a group of barbarians who destroyed Western civilization, the author delivers a fascinating new perspective and encourages us to think deeply about the ways the stories we take for granted shape our understanding not only of the past, but also of the present. So this is short, but this could be one of those short biographies that I end up loving passionately. You all know if you watch this channel, although not all of you, quite a few of you are new. We just passed 7,000 subscribers, so hello to all you newcomers. This is an intensely bookish area. Feel free to sound off in the comments field. And also you're going to notice, if you haven't already, for those of you who are new to this channel, that I leave my email on every video. That is not an email to my merch store. That is not an email to some second cousin who is my business manager. That is my email. Feel free to email me about any subject under the sun, whenever you feel like it, about books, recommendations, family troubles, pet questions, societal observations, anything you want. A shoulder to cry on, an ear to bend. The only things that I ask you to recall in emailing me personally, since it flies in the face of all YouTube rules, I think I have the right to impose a couple of considerations on it. Number one, as I've said in a few videos before, is to remember that despite my sexy raven-haired appearance, I actually predate the internet. And so, I do not at all cede you the right to personally insult me. On the internet, a vicious personal insult is seen as basically a way of saying hello. And the conversation or the dialogue is going to continue past that. That is warped and very diseased, and it is a product of the internet. I predate the internet, and if you insult me, then you have signaled that you want our interaction to be over. Even if it's the first thing you do, you're still signaling that you want our interaction to be over. And the only way that that interaction will continue is if you apologize, and of course you're not going to apologize. This is the 21st century. No one apologizes ever, under any circumstances imaginable, for anything at all. So you aren't going to do that, which means that an insult, if you're insulting, you'll end things. And the other consideration I might point out is that since I leave my email on every video, I get lots of emails. So I might not be able to respond right away. And especially if you send me an email saying, well, hi, how are you? I love your videos. Thank you very much for that, by the way. And now I'd like your opinion on these 35 books, and feel free to go into any detail that you want. If you do something like that, well, okay. All right, I will get to it. I'm sure I will get to it, but I want you to keep in mind that opining in finished prose about books on demand is my job. And if you send me an email like that saying, here are 35 authors, please rank them and then write about them in detail for me to tell you what you think, my first impulse is going to be to ask you 2 questions. When is this due? And where is my $2,000? And if your answer is, well, I want you to do it for free, then you can expect a reply accordingly. but anyway, as you know, it's a long digression about emails, but as you know, if you've watched this channel, I love biographies. And I also admit, I love big, fat biographies. Big, fat biographies. You couldn't actually write an 800-page biography of Alaric the Goth from what we know about him. You couldn't actually do it. It would have to be a life and times, and the times part would have to outweigh the life part enormously. This author has obviously chosen not to do that. Instead, what the pub sheet says is he's pulling together everything we know about this, and then about this person, and then reassessing what we know. Well, that's fascinating. And there are quite a few short biographies. There was one about Virginia Woolf just a few years ago. There are quite a few short biographies that do that really well and that I love, even though I love large biographies. So, but who is this author anyway? He's associate professor of ancient and late antique Mediterranean history at St. Louis University and author of Coming Out Christian in the Roman World and 2 scholarly books on antiquity. He has worked extensively as an archaeologist in Rome and from 2010 to 2013 taught at the Department of Classics at Georgetown University. Okay, great. So, and that's really important too, that he has archaeological training, because that's where you're going to get a lot of information about this person. So, fantastic. All right, so this has a date. I should probably fold this origami style so that I can see the date when I look at it. This has a date of the first week of June. And once again, because it's a finished new copy, standard cautions apply, right? Standard cautions apply. Once upon a time in 2019, it was once in a blue moon thing that a pub date would change. Now they're changing all the time. So you know, if this strikes your fancy, and why wouldn't it? You might want to keep that in mind, that it might not come out on the date as told. So let's see what this next one is. Oh, very good. Do I have any paperwork on this? No, I don't. All right. Okay, great. I think we've seen this on this channel before, but I am so glad to have a finished copy. How wonderful. Okay, this is Dark Mirror by Barton Gellman. This is his book about Edward Snowden. The subtitle is Edward Snowden and the American Surveillance State. And this is his ultimate insider's account of learning and then breaking and then dealing with the Edward Snowden story. And the reason I'm happy to see this is because I'm reviewing this. I'm commissioned to review this, and am eager to do so. I have read eagerly every word on this subject, and I've written about it a few times. And this is fantastic. Oh, fantastic. Okay. The reason why I go nuts for this is because when you're reviewing a fact-dense thing like this, not so much a novel, but when you're reviewing a fact-dense work of nonfiction like this, you really, really want the index. You really do. And a lot of advanced copies don't have it. Mine doesn't. So I've got it right here. Look at that. Right here on my current work shelf. I have the advanced copy, and now I don't need it. Thank God. Thank God. I can substitute it for this. I have already read this book. I read the advanced copy, and I have studied it. I've hunkered down. The author didn't have his index, but he does have his notes, and the notes are an education in their own right in terms of his methodology. This is a really good book, really thought-provoking. It's not 100% pure, of course, and it skirts a lot of issues that I'll want to bring up. Oh, I can't wait to write about this. Just can't wait. I almost wish I could review it twice. But anyway, there we go. Another finished copy, Dark Mirror, and this one I don't have. Darling, what is your date? The date on this advanced copy is May 19th. I don't know if that's true. Don't know if that'll end up being true. I'm hoping so, because I'm planning on reviewing it in May. So I'll file my review, and we'll let the ships fall where they may. So that's another finished copy of a book that, if you're interested in this subject, this is well worth your time. It actually has prompted me to reread Snowden's own book, which I didn't think I would do. I have a bunch of other books on this subject and on this person, including a graphic novel, a rather embarrassing graphic novel. So, but some of them are fascinating. One of which I don't think, I mean, I've read this book, I was paying attention. I don't think Barton Gellman mentions. One book on this subject was called How America Lost Its Secrets. and was a takedown of the whole received saint's life of Edward Snowden. And I don't think this author mentions it at all. I don't think he references any of the assertions in that book. And I'm wondering why. I'm wondering why that is. So I'm doing a whole lot of preliminary research here. Is the reason that he doesn't mention that book because that book has been authoritatively discredited? Or is it just because that book charts a counter-narrative that he doesn't like? And a whole bunch of other things. Does this book contradict other first-hand, Ultimate Insider accounts? Everybody that was part of that Ultimate Insider ring has now written a book. Barton Gellman was the last. But Snowden and all sorts of other people have done that. How does this square with that? And if so, why? In other words, how trustworthy is this? Well, as you can tell, I have a lot that I want to say about it. Can't wait. Fantastic. Could be important. Then we have this this skinny little box. We're still going strong here. We still have lots of mail. We're not making do with just one book here. We have lots of mail. Let's see here. Okay, this is another finished copy. The date on it is late May. Did we see this already? I don't think we did. This is by Xena Hits. What a name. Why can't I be called Xena Hits? And it's called Lost in Thought, The Hidden Pleasures of an Intellectual Life. How utterly fascinating. What is this? In an overloaded, superficial, technological world in which almost everything and everybody is judged by its usefulness, where can we turn for escape, lasting pleasure, contemplation, or connection to others? While many forms of leisure meet these needs, Xena Hits writes, few experiences are so fulfilling as the inner life, whether that's of a bookworm, an amateur astronomer, a bird watcher, or someone who takes a deep interest in one of countless other subjects. Drawing on inspiring examples from Socrates to Augustine, that's St. Augustine to you, bub, okay? I might not agree with anything he writes, and I might not agree with the religion that underpins it, but if you earn the title saint, you don't take it away, okay? Whoever wrote this thing, whoever the publicist is here, if your name started with saint, I would call you saint. It's not Augustine. It's St. Augustine, okay? And Malcolm X, and Elena Ferrante. So we are 2 for 4. We're mentioning St. Augustine, we're mentioning Malcolm X, but we're also mentioning Socrates and Elena Ferrante. So, and from the films of Hitz's own experience as someone who walked away from elite university life in search of greater fulfillment. Could scarcely find less fulfillment than elite university life, so the direction to walk is definitely away. Lost in Thought is a passionate and timely reminder that a rich life is a life rich in thought. It does feel almost counterintuitive in 2020 for anybody to even claim that, much less write a book about it. The author is a tutor in the pioneering Great Books program at St. John's College in Annapolis, Maryland, where she also lives. She has a PhD in ancient philosophy from Princeton University, but nobody's perfect, and studies and teaches across the liberal arts. Okay, all right, I am definitely intrigued. How fantastic. I wonder, are those people, Socrates, St. Augustine, Malcolm X, and Elena Ferrante, are those the ones who are mostly dealt with in here? Or are there lots and lots of other people? I wonder if that's true. And this has, oh God, okay, all right. It has a blurb from Stanley Fish, and that is fantastic, because he's a rigorous thinker and doesn't go in for bunkum at all. But it also has a blurb from Alberto Manguel, who not only goes in for bunkum, but I believe on his baptismal certificate, bunkum is literally his middle name. All right, well, fantastic. Another finished copy. This one I didn't see coming at all, and I'm as intrigued as the first two. And it won't take long at all to do. This will be no time at all. All right, now let's just move on. There's a big box here that I'm going to save until last. I think the box is not from a publisher. So it's either a book that I ordered online or it's a book that one of you sent me. But let's see what this first one is. Oh boy, oh boy. Okay. Yeah, this is one that I ordered online. Oh my, okay. All right. Okay, a little backstory. I watched Jason Harrigan in one of his latest videos. He has the channel Byways in Brooklyn, and he is, like myself, he is known for stem winding during his videos. He doesn't make short choppy videos. And he started one of his later videos by saying, "Before we start," and then he noticed, "Oh, that's not anything you want to hear on this channel. You don't want to hear before we start. That's going to be a long one. Pull up a chair, get yourself a mug of tea." And I do have it before we start this time, yes, because like everybody else, I have been missing bookstores. I've not only been missing my daily mail from publishers, but I've been missing the freedom to go to bookstores, both new and used. The bookstore, the Barnes & Noble here in Boston, and the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston. I've been missing the freedom to do that. Of course I have. I've been missing the influx of unpredictability. The one thing that getting books from publishers doesn't have, except in the case of Lost in Thought, is unpredictability. And like a lot of people, that has driven me to explore ordering books online. And for the most part, that was Book Depository for me, with maybe an exception for Amazon now and then, for the used marketplace of Amazon now and then. But I started watching Sean D. Standfast's channel a long time ago. Those of you who don't know his channel, he's an intensely bookish person. and it's wonderful channel. I get the impression that he is as sweet as the day is long, but you can rouse him to irritation on the subject of eBay, on the subject of ordering books on eBay. And I realized when I was watching his channel that I had never done that. And I confess, in a perverse kind of way, every time he got on camera and told an elaborate horror story about ordering something on eBay, about how the seller said it was X and it turned out to be Y, or the seller said, "I'm sending this," and it sat all day in a puddle, or the seller didn't mention this huge divot, or the seller took this kind of openly deceptive practice of blasting it with studio lights for the picture on eBay so that you can't see the defects. Every time he told a story like that, a horror story about how he didn't get what he wanted in the mail, I felt a little more perversely pulled towards trying it myself. Just in a pure, guy thing of the equivalent of bookworms daring each other for daredevil stunts in a schoolyard. Whereas Sean and I are not going to do daredevil stunts in a schoolyard, but I found he could still dare me. It wasn't his intention. I'm sure he meant those videos as a cautionary tale, but nevertheless, I started gravitating towards eBay, and I started wondering, okay, this is really cheap, this book, and I do want it. If I order it, am I gonna encounter a horror story like Sean has so many times? So I did a little of that. And this is the first fruits of that. One of the things that I noticed, I've mentioned on this channel many times, since we're still not done with before we start. Well, I've mentioned many times on this channel that during quarantine, I have been noticing that I want to go back to science fiction more than I do anything else. I started the year with murder mysteries, but somehow the death element in murder mysteries, somehow I associate science fiction and fantasy with only goods, with only positives. It was such an early and formative kind of reading for me. I loved it so much, so passionately, so many endless summer days lost in other worlds, where I've got Asimov's the magazine held up in one hand. I'm turning the pages like that, while the other hand is just absent-mindedly stroking the head of a beagle that's sleeping next to me. So many memories like that I've been going, as a kind of coping, I suppose, I've been going back to science fiction. And not just science fiction, but like many science fiction fans of a certain vintage, my first love of science fiction and fantasy was short stories, not novels. So I've been going back to short story collections quite a bit. And when I went to eBay, I thought, well, what if you were to order a short story collection that you had and maybe know you like and would like to revisit? So I did that. And here it is. This is the first fruit of that. And we could have others in this mail haul. This is the year's best science fiction, edited by the late Gardner Dozois. And this is the 24th annual collection in hardcover. And Sean was right. Look at that. That was definitely not. The seller for this used a screen grab of a perfect cover that they took offline. And they didn't take a picture in situ. They just used that picture. And in their description, they said, "Dust jacket looks like new." And it most certainly does not look like new. Now, unlike Sean or Jason, who are, in addition to being indefatigable readers, are also book collectors, I am not a book collector. Every book for me is a so-called reading copy. So the fact that this has been chewed on by something is not going to deter me in any way. Especially since the publisher, the seller, didn't lie about the inside. The one deal breaker for me would be bright, obnoxious highlighting, and there's none of that. It's clean on the inside. It's just the dust jacket that has suffered. So I will clean this up as best I can. But now I have a big fat collection anthology to read through, and that's great. I don't always agree with Gardner Dozois's choices at all. He and I have had peppery correspondence many times in the course of 30 years. I don't always agree with his choices. There are a lot of times where in these anthologies where I think, okay, well, you needed to do a better job of policing yourself. You went into this with a theme in mind and just chose your stories accordingly. But that was just a whim. At a different month of your life, you would have had a different theme, and your readers aren't going to have that theme. You should be looking at, but ordinarily not. He did a huge amount of reading in the science fiction periodical world, more than I did. And he managed to maintain throughout his entire working career an extremely unsullied critical yardstick, which is really hard to do. The number of really great editors who do lots of work and keep that yardstick pure, you can count them on the fingers of one hand. There are hardly any of them. Leslie Klinger would be a really good one. David Hartwell, another one. But the late Terry Carr was notorious for that. He was perfect at it. But Gardner Dozois, pretty much so. I might argue with this thing. I remember reading a lot of this, but I might not even have read it all. So fantastic. Okay, so my first eBay experience so far is largely positive. This is largely as advertised. It's got dings. But Sean said that. He warned me. He could give a seminar in these things. I swear he could. He warned that if the seller uses a stock photo instead of their own photo, that's a warning sign. If they use their own photo but part of the book is missing, where they show you the book and the picture is like this, well, why is the picture like that? Because this is right there and they don't want you to see it. Or if the picture is under floodlights so that you can't make out the dings and dents and whatnot. I imagine that would be more important to someone like Sean or Jason who want really fine copies in their collection, especially if they're paying the money for it. It might be more important for them. I paid virtually nothing for this thing, and I don't care about such things. But Sean was right. He was absolutely right that the seller some sellers will get away with bloody murder if you let them. I think that probably is why a lot of people I've been talking to about eBay have said, yeah, I did the Wild West scattergun approach like you did, where I just looked for things that I wanted. I did that at first, but I don't do that anymore. Now I deal with specific sellers. Once a seller proves to me that they're trustworthy and honest, then I just stick with them. I might end up doing that. You never know. This might be habit forming. Even when everything's back to normal, this might be habit forming. Okay, all right. Oh my God, this is from one of you. Who is this? Oh, please. Okay. All right. As long as we understand, you people, as long as we understand, the proper way this happens is that I send books to you, okay? Not that you send books to me. You've got kids, mortgages, petulant significant others. You don't send things to me, okay? Not to mention the fact that my number one rule is don't send me a book. I send things to you. I get tons of books up to my eyeballs under normal circumstances in 2019, hopefully again in 2020. I send things to you. No strings attached, no need to repay me, okay? Not you sending things to me. The only way that I'm going to excuse this, what apparently is a trend, the only way I'm going to excuse this is because of quarantine. Because of an exceptional news-making pandemic, okay? And in the minute that pandemic lifts, I want this nonsense to stop, okay? Then we go back to me sending you things and you not sending me anything. You marshalling your money for other things. You've got horse tranquilizers to buy. But anyway, I have mentioned lately, I shouldn't have, because I've been bombarded with presents. I've mentioned lately that I really, really like the Everyman's Library hardcover collection of books. I just think they're beautiful. I love them so much. And lately I realized in 2019, I found a couple and realized, boy, you know, I should have a whole bookcase of these things. I love them, and I use them. Unlike most other reprints, aside from Penguin Classics, these are easily my favorites. And a couple of you have been sending me Everyman Library editions. And I think, what was it that sparked? What was it that made this stand out in your memory? Was it, I found a Dostoevsky volume, right? I found a Dostoevsky volume in this version, right over there, and went on about it. And I certainly wasn't praising it because of the Peviar and Volkonsky translation. I was praising it because of it's an Everyman hardcover. I think that's what did it. Well, one way or another. Thank you so much. You know who you are. This is another Everyman's Library hardcover, this time of the Old Testament. And if you remember my library tour, I have the New Testament. This is going to go right in this room. It's going to go right next to that book. I wonder if that's another reason why you people are liking doing this, because you know these books are going to be in this room. That not only am I not going to chastise you for sending me something that I'm going to sell right away, but that I'm not even going to put it in the outside. I'm going to put it in this room. This is certainly going in here. I'll make room for it right now. Incredible. This is the Everyman's Library Old Testament. And I have the New Testament. Oh, incredible. Okay, this has an introduction by George Steiner, who we've been dealing with in our read-alongs of the Penny Press. We've been seeing all sorts of stuff about George Steiner. He's been in the letters column of the TLS. But this has his long introduction, which I love. I have it in a collection of his work. And that is fantastic. This is just the King James Bible. With the Everyman's Library hardcover, it's got the sewn binding, just a plain cover. It's got the built-in cloth bookmark. This obviously was ordered online, unless it was from your house, because it's got smudges and whatnot. It's obviously not a new book, but good Lord, I could not be happier. How wonderful. Oh, incredible. Okay. All right, and then we have the box. And then we'll be done with a nice 30-minute nail haul, full of stuff. Even an active bean. I've even got an active bean here. Her male destroying impulse. What have we got here, baby? You want to destroy this box? Hmm? Oh, you do. Oh. Wait. So what have we got here? Oh, okay. Okay, I hesitate to admit I ordered this myself. You're all gonna yell at me. You're gonna yell at me, but I did it anyway. I ordered it anyway, and I ordered it on eBay. It was another experiment on eBay. Now this is exactly what the seller described it to be, and they showed a picture, and their picture was taken in normal lighting from multiple angles. They were an example of a good person, of someone doing it the way Sean Standfast would like. Where they are just plainly showing you what they have, and you will either take it or leave it. And the reason you're going to yell at me is not for that, it's that I absolutely do not need this. I'm doing a series. David Murphy and I are doing a series for the remainder of quarantine. We are doing a series called Chunksterama, where we are going to encourage you to do the kind of there but for a rainy day reading that you always say you'll do and that you conspicuously haven't been doing during this plague. And that is to take the huge books off your shelf and read them. And we're going to read them with you. And we decided before we get into the really deep end of the pool that the first one we do would be Lord of the Rings. And I ordered a copy. I ordered a set of Lord of the Rings. And the reason that some of you are going to yell at me is because I have 20 copies of Lord of the Rings. I did not need to do it at all. I was a little bit caught up in the thrill of ordering on eBay. I was kind of curious to see what it would be like. So I went on eBay and looked for Lord of the Rings editions. And I love box sets. I found a box set, and this is it. It's the movie, but it's done really well. I love the somber, just the wraparound 9 riders on the cover like that. And the seller said that the silver highlighting was all intact, that it had not been scuffed off. That is entirely true. The seller said that there was slight use on the corners, that you could tell this had been taken on and off a bookshelf, but that it wasn't, the box was still intact and it wasn't damaged to the books or any kind. And the seller, now we'll see, the seller also said that the books are in perfect condition. That it's only the box that's been moved around. The books have not been read. So let's see. Oh my, okay, well that is entirely true. That is entirely true. These are absolutely gorgeous. Completely new. Completely untouched. There's 2 towers. There you go. Look at that. and the Fellowship of the Ring. Now, some of you will remember, those of you who've been around for a long time will remember, that I did a read-along of The Lord of the Rings years ago. The guys at Strip Cover Lit started, they were going to do a read-along between themselves of the Fellowship of the Ring, and I joined in. I horned my way in. I did a read-along of that, and then when they stopped at Fellowship of the Ring. I went on to The Two Towers and Return of the King. If I remember, I will leave all of those videos linked below. There are quite a few of them. I would just take you through the whole book, you know, bit by bit, chunk by chunk. And a lot of you will remember I have 2 of these trade paperbacks. I have these 2. The Return of the King and the Fellowship of the Ring. Only mine, the ones that I had, were so beat up. I found them at a charity shop and they were just falling apart. Mine were so beat up that the acetate overlay for the cover was peeling off. And so to make my copies distinctive, I did, in fact, peel it all the way off. So my copy of this movie cover Fellowship of the Ring is just 5-pack-a-day tobacco addict Elijah Wood as Frodo Baggins. It has none of this. There's no lettering on it at all. The lettering is part of an overlay that was fastened onto this cover, and mine it came off. So mine is just Frodo. And the same thing is true with these others. My Two Towers still has some of the overlay attached to it, but my Return of the King is just Aragorn. And now I have yet another Tolkien edition in honor of Chunksterama. David Murphy and I are going to be talking about the Fellowship of the Ring, I think, this weekend. So I needed a new edition to read, didn't I? All right, so there you go. That was the mail. Wow, well, if that was in the mail, I don't know what was. So let's do a Steve Pyramid. How much fun to get all this stuff in the mail and to test myself against the schoolyard taunt of Sean D. Stamfast. He wasn't taunting, I stress that. He was cautioning. He was trying to instruct, but nevertheless, I'm a contrary South Boston Irish Catholic cuss, and I took it as a challenge. And I thought, well, will I have bad luck on eBay? I want to see what eBay's like. And now I know, at least a little. So we have Dark Mirror by Barton Gellman, his account of Edward Snowden. We have Alaric the Goth, new, very short biography of a pivotal figure in the fall of ancient Rome. We have Lost in Thought, a new book singing the praises of inward thought, of reflection. Imagine that. Then we have the year's best science fiction, Gardner Dozois. This is collection number 24 from eBay. So it's a little bit worse for wear. I'll see what I can do with it. Oh, it's got a sticker right there. That's going to have to come off. Okay. Then the Everyman's Library Old Testament, sent to me by one of you. What is wrong with you people? I just don't know. How incredible. That's going to go in this room right away. And finally, a totally extraneous boxed set of The Lord of the Rings. Just totally extraneous. I do not need it at all. The best possible thing I could do, the sensible thing with that box set, would be to take my individual acetate-free trade paperbacks of these same editions and throw them away. But am I going to do that? I don't think so. I don't know, but I don't think so. Oh, God. Anyway. That was the mail. That was our last mail haul of the week, and it was mighty healthy. So that's fantastic. Couldn't be happier. We'll see what next week brings. No promises, of course. Could be nothing. But this week was a clean sweep. Fantastic. So I'm going to wrap this up and go explore my eBay treasures, but I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.